Dev Branch.
This is episode number 27 of Dev Branch, WordPressing with Abandonware.
With Abandon.
I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at jasontucker.blog.
I'm Faye Reed. I wasn't looking at the screen. I do stuff at places. Faye Reed Media on all the things.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mullenweg, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast.
Speaking of that podcast, go and subscribe to us wherever it is that you want to subscribe to us, and come hang out with us in our Discord.
Our Discord that is surprisingly more active every time I check. I'm just like, oh shit, people are actually talking in the Discord.
Right?
Okay, here's something I learned about Discord yesterday, okay? Because I've been more discordant. All of Midjourney is generated through a Discord bot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did I know that? No. And literally last night I was like, you know what? I'm procrastinating and I should go to bed. But instead, I'm going to finally look up Midjourney. And then I was wait, what? I didn't start doing it because I was just so flabbergasted by the fact that I was in I thought they were just going to verify me in. And then I was like, oh no, this is like a thing to a bot. I like lost my mind. Anyway, that's what I learned about Discord yesterday.
I didn't know that you could get more discordant, say, but
I'm getting down with the Discords.
Hey, look, we've got a pal.
Hello.
Hey, Robert, how you doing today?
I have to find a new song for you.
Yes.
Gotta find
I'm doing
a new
good.
one.
Doing good. A lot of more free time. Enjoying my time.
Good. Glad to hear it. So, what are we talking about today, Cosper? What do we got going on here? We got Robert here. We're probably gonna be talking about some like security type thing or something.
I have questions actually. So
yeah,
I actually did a little bit of research for this topic.
What? Stay with a little research is a dangerous thing.
I know, but I'm not going to introduce it because it's definitely not my bailiwick. But yeah.
Oh, bailiwick.
This is what's going to be showing up today, I think, right?
Right. We're going to get the little overtime banner going, possibly. So this week we are kind of talking about abandoned WordPress plugins, and there was a story. I don't know if you've got it locked and loaded, Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
There was a story last week about effectively Sakuri found that there were hacked sites that were pulling in a plugin from the WordPress repository, installing it, a long abandoned plugin that effectively would insert PHP as part of its functionality, insert PHP into your site as part of shortcodes. And because the PHP that was being inserted was stored in the post table and stored in places where you wouldn't expect inline PHP and hack backdoors and everything like that, it was a whole lot harder to kind of find it and suss it out. But
so I have a question.
Yes.
So this plugin, just because this is just such a really important and interesting and also like always on the margins topic, because no one really there's so few people that like really understand what they're talking about with this stuff, right? Even though we all kind of know it's important. So the plugin in the repo had been abandoned, right? So it was like super old plugin, right?
Right.
So that code hadn't been updated. So what they were doing, just to clarify for me, is taking that, because obviously you can get the code of that plugin anyway, right? So whatever they did with that code, figuring out what it did on the websites that they had hacked, and then figuring out what it did, then putting it on the websites they had hacked, and then using its functionality, which was to insert PHP shortcode, to insert malware, malcode, or whatever you want to call it, right? Is that essentially what was happening? So they were not putting the malware essentially in the plugin, but they were using the plugin's functionality in order to exploit a site. Is that correct?
I would change one word. The exploit was probably originally another compromise, right? It was another vulnerability, but they were using this plugin whose purpose is to allow arbitrary PHP code execution as a convenient kind of backdoor. Right now, it's not the plugin's fault. The plugin had no malicious code. Its just purpose was to put PHP and store it in the database.
I literally think once upon a time I saw that plugin. I don't know if it was the same plugin, but there was a plugin on a client site, one of those I inherited type sites that had like plugin in a post and literally or PHP in post, and literally I went into this post and it was like a code editor. It was like just the full like what you would see in your your IDE or whatever, like for reals. Like it was. I mean, obviously, I got rid of it right away, but that's not
smart.
Obviously a way to do it. But that was the intention of the plugin. So the plugin was not compromised, right?
Yep.
Correct.
That's correct.
I just think that's really fascinating because you think about it being the plugin being compromised and maybe someone like taking over an abandoned plugin and then like putting malware into it that's on the repo, but that's not the case here. This is just some like clever usage of old plugins, like exploiting it as literally like a tunnel.
Wow.
Yeah,
they need to upgrade it to blocks is what they need to do.
So
that way we
have
can
a lot of
use
time on their
blocks.
hands.
We need PHP and blocks plugins, right?
How do you think they figured this out, you guys? Like, how did someone are they trolling the plugin repo for like plugins that do this or what? Like, how?
There's a graph. There's a graph in there that is really cool in that article that shows the spike of installations. So we can really pinpoint
on this abandoned plugin.
We can pinpoint when basically there was an attack, like a botnet or some attacker profile.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, there it is.
Right around, March 2023, they decided to integrate this into their automated attack structures, which spiked the installs. And what's really sad about this graph is that's installs per day. Also, that's compromised sites per day. So this is how many sites were getting compromised by this specific botnet that was utilizing this plugin, legitimate plugin, but abandoned, but has backdoor in like.
But that's not how they were getting into the sites.
Correct.
The sites they were getting in some other way.
Yeah.
Then they were using their takeover of the site to install the plugin directly from the repo.
Yep.
So there's so many points. I don't want to say a failure, but kind of a failure here, right? Like this is not just one point of failure situation. This is like a little stack of failures.
Yeah, I'm gonna defend the plugins team. I believe, I'm not certain because I couldn't find the record, like official statement for this, but they do not allow plugins that execute or pull in remote code. Like I think this is like a new rule. Like they're very sensitive about that because they knew that this was a possibility.
Right, but so this plugin was like in there and abandoned prior to that rule, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting from an abandoned plugin perspective.
Is that something that could be monitored to see if like an old plugin that just hasn't been used for a long time is now getting like this weird popularity? This isn't music. This isn't like, oh, we heard a song on TikTok and now we're all gonna go listen to it. Like what's
it was on Better Call Saul, so you should like
like what? How do you like what's the correct approach for that of being able to have some way of looking at like really old ass plugins that are being downloaded and like what why?
Like did security notice that spike or did they like track down the exploit like and then find that?
I don't know what the article goes into. Does the article say? I suspect that security traditionally, I always do it. But I can assume the security is really good at cleanups. So I think this was identified through a cleanup process, and they probably found this malware being installed there, and then they probably identified look at the spike, right? And then they went straight to whatever news agency to kind of make a big deal about it.
It's been probably 6 or 7 years since I worked over at WP Engine and like worked with Securi on like a day-to-day basis because they historically were using Securi for site cleanups. But I do know that Securi has both the file scanning that they do, the database scanning, and they have historically looked for like obfuscated code, base 64 or whatever encoded code that's just hiding out in there. So it wouldn't surprise me if something popped up on a scan, and maybe the first or second time they didn't notice it. But then once you start, and especially like if you have, the team that they do over there who's doing site cleanups, second or third time they start seeing that, they're like, hey, wait a minute.
Right.
Let's see what's going on here.
So I'm just wondering if there's a way to look at it from the standpoint of like the store that's selling, the flu, medicine or something, and looking at the number of times that those are being purchased, and you're like, oh wait, obviously something's happening because
I'm pretty sure there's a federal law case about that centering around oxytocin.
So I'm just curious, because we're pulling this from one directory, like looking at that directory and just seeing like, is there a spike in this like 15-year-old plugin or something?
That's the most interesting part. Well, I mean, there's a lot of interesting parts about this, I think, but I think one of the really relevant parts moving forward, not just this plugin, but I think, and what you're asking, Jason, is like, are we monitoring these spikes? Like, should we as a community, as the plugin team, the make teams, should WordPress be monitoring the repo for spikes in plugins or spikes even in themes, right? That like, that should just be checked out. Because if you got a flag that said, hey, a 17-year-old, first of all, we need to talk about a plugin being 17 years old. Is it really 17 years old? It's like 10 years old. However old it is, 12 years old. So like, that's a second conversation. But like, if the plugin team or someone was able to monitor that, there was a report that came through the meta channel or whatever and said, hey, this plugin is getting a lot of attention. I mean, there's really no downside to that, because someone could go look and be like, oh, this is a really old plugin, or, oh, this is a brand new plugin, and like, it's the newest, best thing in the world, right? So in one case, it would be handed off to security and like the team handling the security issues. And on the other hand, it could go to like the marketing team, and it could be like, look, this plugin is like super popular all of a sudden. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, it could be used for multiple things. So that seems like that's something that could be beneficial to implement, just that feedback. But it seems like that could be automated. That seems like we could do that.
Right. That seems like a use case for, and gosh, I am cringing that I'm even saying this. It seems like a use case for AI, where you can say, you can say, flag, like basically if a plugin is older than N.
Wait, are we doing this as a drinking game? I just want to make sure I'm doing this correctly. Is it every time Cosper says AI we drink? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. No, every time Cosper says AI, something positive about AI.
Right.
And then we drink.
A butterfly gets its wings or something like that.
I will buy a freaking bottle of tequila and put it. I hate tequila, but like I will. It's not good for me. I don't hate it, but it's not okay. But I will buy it and put it on my desk if we do that. But I will literally, like, every time you say something positive.
Oh boy,
worth it.
So I do think that I mean, it doesn't even have to be AI. It could really just be a script that checks for
right.
Like it doesn't even have to be that smart.
At what point is AI a script? Like where does it deviate from? You write a script and it does a thing. Isn't that AI? It's the same thing, right? It's all AI. No?
Most AIs are still just scripts. Come on.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
I think it depends on how much data it's looking at.
We're going to ask the computer to look at it. That's what we're saying.
Let's ask ChatGPT where AI line is.
Yeah.
Right. It's the difference between a 3-line bash script and a 17,000 million line bash script.
Well, what if the 3-line bash script just pulls in an API request from the API engine or the AI engine?
I just want to ask ChatGPT. I would say, hey, ChatGPT, do you think this is going to be a problem? It'll be like, I don't know. Well, let me tell you, here's all the possibilities, but I can't decide.
So to try, in the interest of preventing us of going into overtime. Now, I will say, so WordPress and the plugin repository, I told Tucker and Say I was gonna try to extend an invite to Otto, and I just fell asleep at the wheel and never did it. I thought it would be good to get someone from the. It would be good to get someone from the meta team to talk about that. Yeah, maybe he is.
Otto? Are you in the audience?
You have to say it 3 times. 3 times and then it happens.
Auto. Okay. Not
Let's
today,
see if he shows up. No, but so the plugin directory does a really good job of hiding kind of the older plugins. If you go looking for particular plugins, you don't really get a lot of results of stuff that is 3, 4, 17 years old and hasn't seen an update. But they do still list it. So if you're clicking
it's still
through,
there. You could Google to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can Google to it. You can.
GPT would know about it.
If you're install from WPCLI, you can install it.
Right, you can still install it from WPCLI. You can, there are ways to still get at these plugins, and in some cases, this is still a good plugin or whatever. But like, should the project maybe think about suppressing some of these older plugins, like have a cutoff date? I know that it's like, hey, WordPress has got 60,000 plugins. Like, how many of those are like old ass long tail, like haven't been updated in like more than 3 years?
With the current process that's happening on the plugins team, I know that they're really standardizing a lot of the operations, and so I think this is something that's going to be part of sort of like the new approach. And so I think that this is a really good time to bring up those concerns, not to say that they haven't been happening, but just to ensure that they are being put into the documentation and being put into the process that is now being formed. So, people like Robert and Cosper, you should be going to the plugin meetings, to the meta meetings, which I happen to be running with Courtney right now, interim. You should be going to these meetings and having these conversations, because this is 2 things I'm going to say. One, we have a lot of, especially here in WaterCooler, we have a lot of conversations, over here about stuff. But the truth is that this stuff matters, right? This is like a lot of websites. This is like bot stuff, and those all are like the botnets that like become botnets and like sleeper botnets and whatever else, right? Like, this is a big deal from a security perspective, from an internet safety perspective, from a WordPress perspective. And like, there is not enough, there's a lot of conversation and a lot of knowledge in the in the greater community. And for a variety of reasons, I could go into like I could write 12 essays about the reasons, but for a variety of reasons, that knowledge is not being shared in like the official Make WordPress community. It is happening in post status, that conversation. And so I wanted to say, like, there is I don't know, Robert, are you in post status?
Not recently.
So there was a conversation a little while back with Yoast and someone else who's Yoast, who may not be of Yoast anymore, but
formerly of Yoast.
Formerly of Yoast, was talking about security with someone, and they were talking about reporting and how hard it is to track down the plugin folks, the person whose plugin it is that may have a compromise, the plugin developer, because there's no like clear direct security contact. There's no reporting process set up. And so that has to go through the plugins team. And so the conversation was really about, should there be materials of it, like should that security contact be available on the plugin page? Should there be if you're logged in and have certain site rights, should you be able to see contact information for the plugin developer where you could make a security report? Because right now, like I said, the people who find the security issues have to contact the plugin review team, who then contacts the plugin developer. And when you have a plugin review team that is, as you wrote about in your article, right, Robert, just literally like a small part of a big funnel.
Yeah.
Like a little small.
It's overburdened, right? Yeah.
It's definitely
too much reliance on
overburdened.
them. Yeah.
But I disagree with your solution in that article, but I the problem we agree on for sure. And we all know that that's been a problem. And again, there's a million political reasons that has been a problem. But right now, that is being shaped for the future. And the people who have this expertise, who care about WordPress, should get their butts to a meeting in Slack and should raise these concerns and have these conversations, because it will benefit all of us to have these conversations in a place and, maybe make those changes, maybe implement some good stuff. Like the people who are there, not just the plugin review team, but all of the Make community are overburdened. And a majority of them are sponsored by individual companies that you might surmise are the individual companies. And those companies don't have all the answers. That's all I'm going to say. Like, they might be great. I'm not talking about intentions. I'm just saying inside of one company, you get siloed. And there is a lot of knowledge out there. Your article, Robert, like what you bring to the table, Cosper, like that could really impact this stuff. So I'm going to get off my contribution soapbox now, but I really feel that there has never been a more important time for the plugin team than right now, for the future of WordPress. Maybe when it first came around, but for now, like the future of the plugin team is being developed right now. And this needs to be part of that conversation, because right now it's not becoming easier to report security concerns. Like that's not becoming a less obscure process. So how can we, as WordPress, take a more open perspective on this and be, like Robert, like you're like, you report bugs, right? Mm-hmm. You report problems, you find problems and report them. Like this is an important part of security, right?
Yep. That's how it works.
I mean, Robert, you had a whole project at your last gig where you were updating some kind of were they mainly abandoned?
Yeah. Typically abandoned, because these were plugins that had security issues publicly reported in them, and then no patch available. Plugins that used to be available
in the WordPress repo specifically, or just
it could be any WordPress plugin. But 90% are in the repo. That's where the most attraction comes, right? And some other person found a security bug in them, and I took it upon myself to write the patches for them, right? As an educational thing, because I felt that a lot of the security arena discussion is always like, hey, here's how you hack stuff. Here's how you hack stuff. And I was like, here's how you patch stuff. Here's how you patch. I'm just trying to make the next step, the next logical step in this process, right? You can find the bugs, but can you patch the bugs? And what's neat is some WordPress security researchers are starting to actually add, here's how I would patch it, right? Like, here's the code I use to patch this. But with WordPress and open source, really, you can get a variety of responses back. And unfortunately, with a lot of the patching that I was doing, either the patch was way too late, right? Like some things I patched that had been exposed publicly over a year prior, and the sites that were running that plugin that was vulnerable, they've already basically been taken offline by hacks or something or other, like far too late to win that game against the botnets and such. In other cases, though, I mean, I've offered it, I think within a week or two, and it's like you mentioned, there's no process for this, right? There's no literal process of let me accept third-party code into this plugin. Unless they're in
GitHub, right?
Yeah,
and you could.
And GitHub has
one, right?
GitHub has a great one. Yes, GitHub has phenomenal resources for this. In fact, I'm starting to think we should kind of move things towards GitHub and then just.
The WordPress community, the WordPress teams are moving a lot of the stuff over. Obviously, not MetaTrack or CoreTrack. That's not going anywhere for a while. But the marketing teams operating there. Everyone's moving to there. And I think that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But
and it's free.
It makes a lot of sense. It's free, but it also has it's really the most beautiful thing I think about pull requests and doing it this way. It's all documented. Like it's not like a security person is freaking emailing somebody else. Like who's the email? Sure. Like we're like emailing people, and like where does that go? It goes.
Here's an attachment. Here's an attachment with a bunch of code. Please upload it to this plugin that I don't.
What are we doing? Like this is that's not.
I want to say I actually did just get a pull request accepted for a plugin that was part of the core WordPress team. like they had a very minor vulnerability. It's almost trivial. I know it is trivial, like, but I won't say what it is just for.
It's only trivial until it's 5 years later and someone's building out like a whole like patchwork.
This is the sort of thing. Well, this is the sort of thing that would show up in some security report because it got a CVE assigned to it, and then like some vendor who's using WordPress would be like, "Why? We have to fix this CVE," and then they look back at the developer and then ask them, and like the developer would get these requests constantly.
What's a CVE?
CVE is Common Vulnerability Enumeration. It's just a number that associates a vulnerability to like this unique identifying number. But yeah, it shows up. Yeah, there's government organizations.
Like a world number, or is it like a per company number?
There are governing agencies that manage their individual numbers. Japan has their own. US has their own. Probably China has their own, but they don't share that information publicly.
For bugs, for like vulnerabilities.
Yeah, it's basically, and you have a certified numbering authorities that like it.
Wow,
they go between to validate things.
It's almost like the barcode type thing with like the numbers at the bottom. It's like that type of
Okay, wait. This is why
I go down another rabbit hole.
This is me in content with websites. I'm like, so can you, as someone who's discovered or patched those vulnerabilities, like list here all the numbers I've fixed? Like, is there a web page? There is.
The developers can do it, and security researchers typically do it to make a resume.
Right, I'm like, here's a list of all of my patches. Like, go find them they're on the official register.
It's like Dribble, but for like,
That's awesome. I did not know that.
I've recommended to security researchers that really want to get into it, basically find one of each type of vulnerability, because there's also like vulnerability categories, and then that's how you can prove you're familiar with a security as a whole.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think that's interesting in terms of kind of the DIY approach to security, which this is my secret thing I was going to tell you. I started reading your website last night. I know. It is or no. I was like, there's a lot going on here. I was just trying to remember, like, because they were like, who's this? I was like, who's our guest tomorrow? And I'm terrible with names. So I was like, I'm just going to go figure out what this is. Oh, look, Otto's here. Hi, Otto. But you had some really interesting posts on your website. But my favorite one, well, other than learning you're basically a secret hacker, which I also learned. What's it called? Oh, I want to call it, I was like an Oompa Loompa, a Palapalooza. You're an open source palimpsest.
Oh, yeah.
What is the word?
Pompadour. No, not Pompadour.
Not Pompadour.
Psychopomp. Psychopomp. Yes. The terminology psychopomp, which is historically connected to the character or the embodiment of the concern of like death, right? Or like the Grim Reaper is a psychopomp
guy, right?
Yeah,
bringing you Sharon, over into the afterlife.
The shepherd, yes, the shepherd who brings you past not heavens. There's no judgment here. It is the one that brings you to the gates, right, from the living world to the dead world. There is some really crazy. I was playing with a talk idea for that, but there's really crazy connections as to
a great talk idea. I love it. I think that is the most interesting. Is that like a common security term, or did you bring those together?
I brought it together, and I may have picked it up from somewhere else, because this has totally happened to me before. Like, I came up with something, I found out like Schneier talked about it. I'm like, darn it. So I hope this there
are no original ideas.
Open source cyber psychopomps could maybe become my trademarked term.
I think it's got an amazing. I love the imagery of it, because this is like the definition of abandonware is that it was abandoned, not sunsetted, right? Like that's literally the thing. It's not like someone was like conscientiously being like, oh well, I'm gonna end this now, right? Yeah. They're literally just like, I forgot about that. That's in some I don't know. I don't have that GitHub email anymore, and I don't even know, right?
And that leaves the abandonware in the area of the living, you could say, right? They're so active in the
purgatory. They're in purgatory because they're not alive, but they're not dead. And every year they become deader because it's not tested with your WordPress, and all of that stuff starts getting added to it. But that's also a problem on the plugin team, because talking to Mika, who is like, the main plugins person forever, is a constant thing that most of the emails that they send to plugin developers bounce. Yep. So, we were talking about how to contact these plugin developers. The plugin team, not only can the security people not reach them, but the plugin team can't even reach them a lot of the time. And it's not even for abandonware. Like that. Like, so obviously abandonware is really abandoned, super abandonware, but even if something's kind of updated, it's 3 years old or something and it's not terrible, but if you're not monitoring that email, if someone signed up with,
if
a
you
domain
worked
they
at a
don't have
place
anymore,
and now you're working at another place, like there's a lot of reasons why you don't have access to that email anymore. And people aren't forwarding emails from one business to the next like that. You're gone at that point,
right?
So there's plenty of like really odd issues that could come up with that, and there is no like essentially source of truth for that communication, like that way of being able to communicate with that person. Even if you put somebody's like, I don't know, Twitter handle, and then we all ditch Twitter, who would have thought, like,
well, exactly, right? Like that's been everyone's main, you can connect, everyone's got that. And even on the WordCamp US sign up, it was like, what's your Twitter handle? And I was like,
like I can't put 2 apps, dang it, what's going on here?
but so I think this is again, I just want to I know we're in overtime and I know I've already made this pitch and this wasn't the point of the show, but anyone who cares about this stuff, come care about it actively is what I'm saying. Like, come care about it and make it better, because it does get annoying to hear the same problems over and over and over when we could change things, because that is the whole freaking point of open source. Yeah. So like, if we all care and we all see the problems with security or whatever, let's go in and make it better, right? Like, let's apply those processes. Let's bring in the other industries' best practices. Let's talk about how can we, like, the conversation happening in post status is not useful. Yeah. Like, it's useful to me, but it's not useful philosophy to the project. And everyone feels then that they've had the conversation. Well, good for you, but it didn't do anything. Like, unless someone is listening and then happens to be there and then goes and contributes. Like, but
somebody else would do the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I'm really, security is one of the biggest deals, because it could have a real problem, but also it undermines the lack of security or security problems getting out there, undermines WordPress's reputation and makes WordPress, it weakens its standing. And it doesn't have to, because it doesn't, it doesn't have to be this way. And again, there's a lot I could say that doesn't have to be this way, but security should be something that is objective. This should not be like a political conversation. This should be, how can we lead the way as an open source project that is still extremely concerned about security, but is able to, do that in a way that is documented and clear and follows best practices. Like, it's possible.
I'd also say build tools that are going to help folks with being able to surface this stuff. Cosper recently did a tool that I think is pretty awesome, and being able to look at and see like what's what, but being able to to look and see what was recently updated and what date in which they were recently updated. And he even wrote a WPCLI command to be able to actually output this as well. So I don't know. You should spend some time like writing some code on how to support these types of initiatives of being able to see like what the heck is wrong with these plugins? Why is this plugin so old? How do I get rid of the old plugins? Even helping people try to find like alternatives to plugins as well.
There's right now there's this stuff, that code that can become part of core. I know there is a plugin that Andy Fragan, a friend of the show and trauma surgeon, is working on, that is currently a plugin that's being tested to test plugin dependencies. So that basically it would say, oh, you have this plugin, well, you have to have the other plugin, and you can install it, or you can't. Like, it won't allow you to install it if you don't have the other plugin, and it gives a little notification. It's a tiny little tool, tiny little plugin, but that can be incorporated into core, because that's something that is just making the system better and function better. And so things, you found it. Yeah. Things like this, I think this is actually going to get smooshed into core also. That's what it's being tested for currently. So
Yeah, we're in OT. Want to be mindful of everybody's time here, but with a funny little story about this plugin that I made, plugin last updated Redux. It's not in the plugin directory yet. It's just up on GitHub. Still making sure to like iron out some bugs. If you want to test it, I encourage it.
Make a pull request.
This is a plugin that was in the repository, still is, that Pete Mall from Range made.
Pete Mall? I haven't heard his name in so long.
Right. I think he plays poker now. Like, I think that's what he does.
He played poker then, but now he doesn't even have to probably play poker anymore.
Right. Anyway. So he
played it well, is the point.
Yes, he has not updated this plugin or the plugin last updated plugin in 11 years, 13 years. I can't remember, but effectively it was an abandoned.
You can't remember when the plugin you can't remember when the plugin that is to tell you when your plugin was last updated.
Because he didn't write it yet.
And you don't know when it was last updated?
He didn't write it yet.
I can't even say that.
Situation.
It's you got there eventually.
There were some words. They might have made sense.
So yeah, I basically took this abandoned plugin. I attempted to reach out and was like, hey, can I mean, it's only got like his plugin has only got like 70-ish installs, like apparently, because it's out of date and people aren't using it. So I was like, hey, can I take this over? I didn't get any answers from him. So I'm like, all right. And then I just forked the plugin, went ahead, brought it up to date. And then once I had it up to date, I started adding some additional functionality. So now like you get a little warning emoji like next to plugins that are older than 2 years. Or the WPCLI command. See, I did it on the first take there, Tucker. The WPCLI command, you run it and it just lists off your repo installed or repo installable plugins and the date that they were last updated. And then off to the side, there is not an emoji, but just a little arrow that points at all of the plugins out of date. So you can go back through and I would maybe like to set up the output so it only shows out of date plugins. I'm still ideating and everything else there, but I do plan on putting this up on the repo. I would love to be able to get the chance to like just take over the plugin last updated spot on the repository.
But again, how do you get a hold of those people and how do you do that?
Vegas,
a few years ago, pre-pandemic, there was a conversation about having an adoption program for plugins.
Right.
That hasn't been on the radar, at least my radar, for a long time. But that's the type of thing that, like, why not? If someone's like done, like, it's kind of, okay, this is a little morbid, but it's like, how you can like, you have the Leave a Baby campaign that you can leave a baby at the fire station, right? Like you can literally like abandon your child at a fire station and not be held liable for like, child neglect or whatever. And that saves lives of children who would otherwise be hidden I told you this was morose, but like, this is the same kind of thing. If there was a process in place where someone could be like, hey, I'm not doing this anymore. Someone can take it over or take it offline. I mean, maybe people wouldn't do that because obviously people are abandoning things, but some would, and there would be a process. At least if there's a process, we could even, implement something that says after 10 years, if you haven't replied, we will put your plugin up for adoption. We'll pull it from the repo and put it in the adoption repo or whatever it is. And then it can just hang out there.
7 years ago, by the way, that we mentioned that particular episode.
Which one? Oh, wow. What year was that?
7 years ago.
Time ago. That was like So 7 years ago, we were talking about plugin adoption, and fucking that has not happened.
No,
I don't know what Otto was talking about with which process. There's a process.
There is. You can tag your plugin if you want to basically give it up. Adopt.
Yes, I've seen, right, but it's kind of very
you would have to care
low lift
in order.
It's a process that's not been adopted by the developers yet.
Yeah, you'd have to care though. That's the thing. And if you don't care anymore, or you don't work there anymore at the place.
Maybe we'll do a marketing campaign for it. Maybe that would be a fun thing to do, like a marketing.
I think the abandonment. You need to acknowledge the abandonment. I think is a good thing.
Oh yeah, they need to be acknowledged. This has been abandoned. I really mean like it could be a bigger part of. It could be a bigger thing, right? Because it's like, hey, here's a bunch of free plugins that you can take and reuse or recycle. Like that's kind of a neat. You're bored one day. You're like, let me go paw through there and see if there's anything fun. Like it's kind of like a rummage sale almost.
There are security implications there, but I like the idea.
There's old code everywhere. Yeah. But I also wanted to just say, Otto had also said that you can add security contact information now to a plugin. You can. And they can add whatever they want, really, in the text. They can add links to their site. But the conversation that was being held in post status with Yoast and whatever was that, should it be required? That's really the question. Should we require there to be a security contact that is maybe an updated email that is kept up to date? You know, is there something that could be more like you put in your security information and then certain people can access it? And that is a monitored account, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be part of more of this is why I don't disagree with your conclusion about the plugins review team and we should take our plugins elsewhere. I don't think that we should just take our plugins. Yes, but I'm email again. Otto, email. Otto just came on here and said
email.
I put my ICQ number on there, but no one ever contacted me.
I'm like, can we get out of the email thing, people? Like, for crying out loud.
I should that there were two recommendations I had with that article. One was going elsewhere to just reduce the burden. The other one was specifically listing a security point of contact, and you can do it free form in your description. I've been recommending it to people for the last few months.
That's a pretty low lift to help people out.
Yeah, it's huge help. And
maybe, but even if that was a field in the plugin stuff that was like optional, but it's recommended and there's a field there. So it's like people who put it in, this is the type of stuff that can be implemented with pretty low lift on the code end, on the required. It doesn't have to be required. It could be optional, but these things can incrementally really improve the system for everybody.
Do you
Otto says that email works and everything else doesn't. And
do you think
I'm just going to make a comment about Gen X and then I'm just going to leave it there.
Do you think there's a reason why a lot of these development houses and agencies and stuff typically will have that company's account listed as the plugin owner as well as a way of being able to allow for essentially like a service account type thing that someone who no matter what will always be able to monitor it? Do you feel like
everyone's monitoring those info at emails, totally paying attention to those.
But I mean, I'm just saying, do you think that that's the reason why those people list those types of accounts in there, or do you think this is something that people should do more of?
Yeah, I will actually say it from the perspective of somebody who I work at DreamHost. It's not a thing that I talk about very often, but I am very proud to work there. And so I work at DreamHost, and we had one of our plugins pulled from the repository, not because there was a security exploit or anything else. It was because the email that was attached to the DreamHost account was attached to or forwarding to someone's inbox who no longer worked for the company, and those emails started bouncing. And I basically had to go in and clean that up and sort that out. And so they do, if an email bounces, they will close and pull down plugins from the repository. My concern is just the emails that don't bounce, but people are just filtering them at this point,
right?
Sleep the wheel or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, this Gmail account from 15 years ago still works, but I never check it.
Just collecting those emails, just talk about abandonware. Think about all the old email addresses that are just collecting all over the internet, just collecting spam, just all the Bed Bath & Beyond that's not even a company anymore. It's like, here's all your coupons for all these companies that don't even exist.
And Google's using it to train an AI model.
Right.
So we're all basically that just makes it clear that the future is idiocracy, because I didn't realize that AI was going to be trained on spam. So I see you.
With that, and look, we're going to end the show.
We're going to have to talk to Otto. We're going to have Otto on the show to officially discuss some of the stuff that's going on with the plugins team. So
yeah,
you're coming on soon. Happening, Otto.
An extra overtime day.
Get ready.
All right, well, we're going to hit our outro button, and someone is going to say the words, because for whatever reason, it never works for me. So here's our outro. Thank you.
Hey, watercooler.com/subscribe. Apple Podcasts. We're on Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Did my mic not work this time?
Yeah.
What the hell is going on? That's so weird.
We should not rely on my microphone, though. No.
No.
All right. Well, we're out.